Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about probably the most important statement that was made by Zelenskyy since the beginning of this year. He stated that Russia is launching drones at Europe from Shadow Fleet tankers. Telling the truth, this is one of the most important statements made by Zelenskyy because now it's become clear what exactly the Western countries, the European countries, and the most important, the NATO countries are trying to achieve with all these updates, with all these things, with drones flying above the territory of Europe. I would like to remind you that since the beginning of September, a lot of drones have been discovered on the territory in the airspace of Poland, in the airspace of the Baltic states, of Norway, of Denmark, violating the airspace of NATO countries, European Union, and of course the Europe itself. And the European countries are saying that all those drones belong to the Russian Federation. So, but the question is how exactly the Russians were able to, let's say, launch drones and to fly above the territory of Denmark. The Russians doesn't have these technical possibilities to launch drones, for example, from the territory of Russia and so on. But now Zelenskyy revealed how exactly the Russians could do this. Zelenskyy is saying that Russians use their shadow fleet. I'm not sure whether Zelenskyy is telling the truth or he is lying, but telling the truth, it doesn't matter, because now we see that the European countries are trying to find a legal connection between the Russian Federation, the shadow fleet, and the drones that were discovered above the territory of the European Union. And if the European countries are able to find this legal connection, then most likely they would be able to use additional tools against the Russian shadow fleet, including the arrest and the inspections and different checks, which obviously will reduce the Russian world trade with oil. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in Ukraine. We got another important statement, this time made by J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States of America. He stated that U.S. authorities are discussing the possibility of supplying Tomahawk missiles to NATO for transfer to Kiev, with the final decision resting with Trump. So we see that most likely Ukraine will get Tomahawk missiles this year, and most likely Ukraine will carry out first strikes before the end of 2025. As for the current situation, the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours carry out very powerful attack in the direction of the city of Belgorod. So this is very important video telling the truth, and here we can see the missiles that were flying above the territory of the city of Kharkiv in the direction of the city of Belgorod. And the sources are saying that this attack was carried out from the city limits of the city of Kharkiv. So the launching system was located exactly in the territory of the city, which is a very strong international crime. Another important thing is that Ukrainians with this attack managed to damage or even to destroy the Russian power station, which is located in the central part of the city of Belgorod. As a result of this attack, power outages were recorded. We have a statement made by the governor of this area. He stated that Ukraine armed forces struck Belgorod infrastructure, injuring people and causing significant power outages. So as you can see, the Ukrainians managed to destroy power station, and this is something like an answer from Ukrainian side regarding Russia's yesterday's attack all over the entire territory of Ukraine. Now let's move further and let's discuss additional updates, and first let's talk about the situation on the ground in the Zaporizhzhia direction. The armed forces of the Russian Federation continued their offensive operation, and during the previous 12 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 28th of September, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 29th of September. As you can see, according to these changes, the armed forces of the Russian Federation of the group of forces east of the 36th Army managed to enter the settlement by the name of Verbova. So the Russians entered its eastern outskirts, and this video confirms this. This video was published by the 110th Mechanized Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking positions of the Armored Forces of the Russian Federation in the eastern part of the settlement. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map. Furthermore, this information was confirmed not just by pro-Ukraine resources, but not just by video published by pro-Ukraine resource, but also by Deep State. According to them, indeed, the Russians managed to break through Ukrainian defense and to answer the village. Furthermore, the Russians are about to finish the battle for the pockets between the settlements by the name of Sosnovka and the Ternovo. So the Russians are trying to tighten the noose around this dense network of the fortifications and to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area. Another important thing is that the Russians, despite the fact that they managed to get very close to the Poltavka and Uspienovka fortified areas, they still haven't started their major assault operation. It seems that the Russians, first of all, are going to move further in the direction of the settlement by the name of Vishneva. It seems that currently the Russians are moving in this direction, and the main purpose of the armored forces of the Russian Federation at this stage of the special military operation, at this stage of the Zaporizhzhia offensive operation, is to capture this territory. So if Russians are able to take under complete control the settlement of Vishneva, this will allow the Russians to block supply and support of the contingent of the armored forces of Ukraine in the area of the Poltavka and Uspienovka fortified areas from the north. And right exactly from this area, the Russians would be able to begin advancing in the southeastern direction towards the settlement of Privilya with the purpose to attack Ukrainians in this fortified area from behind. Obviously, Russians will use not just these roads of attack. Obviously, they will continue attempts to answer the settlement of Uspienovka and Poltavka from the east, but the main problem of these, let's say, operations is that there is a river of Yanchul, that splits this territory in two parts, and the biggest number of buildings and constructions are located on the Ukrainian side of the river, which means that if Russians begin offensive operation like this way, they will suffer huge losses before crossing the river. But if Russians are able to take the village of Vishneva and to begin advancing in the southern direction, obviously this will basically ease the entire offensive operation, and in the end will force Ukrainians to fall back from this territory. So we are entering the most important and the decisive part of the Zaporizhzhia offensive operation. If the Uspienovka and Poltavka fortified areas fall, this will mean complete collapse of the entire eastern flank of the Zaporizhzhia direction, because right after the fall of these fortified areas, most likely the city of Guliaipole will fall in Russian hands as well. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. There are very heavy clashes in the area of breakthrough, and telling the truth, both the Russians and the Ukrainians are living in their own realities. The Ukrainians are saying that they're about to defeat the Russians, to destroy these cauldrons, to damage Russian significant damage, and to probably get the city of Donetsk within a month. This is the reality the Ukrainians are living in. The Russians are living almost in the same reality, but with their own titles of settlements. The Russians are saying that Ukrainians are about to be defeated, that Ukrainians suffer huge losses, and the Russians are about to begin assault operation in the direction of the city of Kiev from this pocket. Of course, I'm joking. I'm just trying to tell you that we see that somebody is lying. As of now, it's very difficult to say who is lying, either the Russians or the Ukrainians, but I must say that obviously we are coming to the moment when it will be impossible to continue lying, and when the real situation will be revealed, and when the illusions are going to crash completely. As for the previous 12 hours, the pro-Russian resources reported that as a result of counterattack, the Russians managed to secure the village of Zaporizhzhia and to restore control over the territory. The Russians are saying that Ukrainians in this pocket were caught in cauldron by the Russians. We're talking about this pocket, and most likely, and according to pro-Russian resources, in coming hours the Ukrainians would be forced either to fall back, or they would be encircled without any chances for evacuation, and they will stay there forever. So very complicated situation, but once again we're getting to the moment when someone's illusions are going to crash. And let's discuss the situation in the Siversk direction. The Russians, as we can see, intensified their offensive operation, and the Siversk offensive operation is gaining momentum. According to information we have, during the previous 12 hours, the Russians improved their positions along the railways between the village of Vyemka and the settlement of Ivanovka and Siversk. This information was confirmed by this video published by pro-Russian resources, and in this video we can see how a Russian soldier was clearing the trenches of the armored forces of Ukraine along the railways between the village of Vyemka and the city of Siversk. This episode was geolocated exactly in this point, and based on this video we have adjusted the map. This is the situation by the end of the 28th of September, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 29th of September. So now we see that the Russians are about to cut and cordon the armored forces of Ukraine, who are currently located in the pockets between the settlement of Pereezhny and Vyemka, and it seems that the contingent of the armored forces of Ukraine in this area was already caught in operational encirclement. It seems that they will be forced to fall back from this area in coming hours or days. Furthermore, the Russians established complete FPV drone control over the road TO 513. In this video, we can see how Ukrainians were trying to bring additional forces to the territory of the city of Siversk, but the vehicle was destroyed as a result of Russian FPV drone attack. Almost the same episode took place this time in the most northwestern part of the settlement. The same story. This time the Ukrainians were trying to evacuate soldiers from the city of Siversk, but they were damaged. Their vehicle was damaged and destroyed. So Russians created complete control, and the Russians, as we can see, created another kill zone along TO 513 road with the purpose not to allow anything to enter the city of Siversk and anything to leave the city. The Ukrainians most likely are losing their logistic, and it seems that before the end of this year, the city of Siversk may fall in Russia's hands. Another important thing is that, according to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the forest and on the territory of the city of Yampol itself. We have this video. We will not discuss and watch this video due to significant number of casualties and violence, but we have several pro-Russian resources that are confirming the same, and we have geolocation that confirm that the Russians have their presence in the northern part of the settlement. So we see that the news around the city of Siversk is tightening, and this Russian offensive operation is gaining momentum. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you can condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.